Hi there, and thank you for tuning in. The first thing you need to do in order to shoot in manual mode on a Nikon D700 is to select the right mode. And there is a little mode button here just behind the shutter. And if you push that one down, the rear command dial enables you to switch between the 4 different modes that the camera has. So let me show you that. Of course, it's a good idea to start with switching on the camera. And then if you push down the mode button, you can see now I'm in manual mode. The top left here on the LCD says M, program mode, shutter speed, aperture priority, and back to manual. So you can change that just pushing down the button and turning the rear command dial. Once in manual mode, you will see there's a little scale that appears here. That's the metering systems that tells you how you're doing in terms of exposing your picture correctly. If it's to the left, as it is right now, then you are underexposing your picture. If it is to the right, you are overexposing it. Once you are in manual mode, you have to control both the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed. So if we start out with controlling the shutter speed, that is the rear command dial. And you can see in the middle of this LCD screen here, I'm now changing the shutter speed, so I'm increasing the speed, and of course the picture then becomes more and more underexposed. If I go the other way, you will see the opposite effect here. So this is the shutter speed you control with the rear command dial. Provided you have a relatively modern lens, the front command dial controls the aperture, and that is shown in the top right part of the LCD. And you can see here now I'm changing it to closing down the aperture to, let's say, f22, and I can go the other way, all the way down to what this lens allows, which is 3.5. The final thing is the ISO, and the ISO button is a dedicated ISO button here, top left on your camera. If you push that one down, you will see it now gives you the reading of the current ISO value. And just like the changing the mode, the rear command dial, if you turn that one, you can see I'm changing the ISO. That's really all there is to it. If you like the camera to select the ISO by itself, also known as auto ISO, you can do that by going into the menu system. So if you push the menu button here top left, then you're in the shooting menu. And if you go from the top, 1 screen, 2 screen, 3 screens down, a little bit over the middle, you will see you have ISO sensitivity settings here. And that one you can turn, you can turn the auto ISO to on, and now the camera controls the ISO itself in order to get the exposure correct. You can also here configure, what is the maximum ISO you will allow the camera to select, and how low can it go in terms of shutter speed in trying to find the correct exposure. Now, on some cameras, this is easily selected using the front command dial, but here you have to go into the menu system. So the D700 unfortunately does not have a dedicated button for switching between auto ISO and manual ISO. What you can do is that you can set it up so that in your My menu, you can set it up so that here I have as menu item number 2, the ISO sensitivity setting, but it is of course not as fast as having a dedicated button. Now I just shown you all this in the top LCD screen, but you can also see exactly the same information here if you push the info button that sits here bottom right on the camera. And top left again, you have the indicator for manual mode. Just below that, you have the ISO reading here of 320. You have the shutter speed, and top right, if I can get it to stay with us, you have the aperture. And again, if I change the shutter speed, it's the rear command dial, and you see how that changes the meter reading. And also I can change the aperture. And finally, with a little bit of luck, I can push the ISO button here and change the ISO value, and boom, that sets it. So you have exactly the same information on the top LCD as you have on the rear screen. And finally, you also have this in the viewfinder. And I'm showing you this a little picture here. You have the shutter speed to the very left. Then the aperture, then the meter scale which is very short, but it is there. And you can also see just to the left of the plus sign, there's a little M indicating manual mode. And to the right, you have the ISO value. The number to the very right is how many pictures you have left on your memory card. That's the number in brackets, and just to the left of that is where you have the ISO value. In order for your camera to work the way I've just shown you, you need to have a lens that has these CPU contacts, right? And those CPU contacts tell the camera which lens is mounted, what is the minimum aperture, and basically gives all the EXIF information so that you get the correct information along with the picture, and also you get the correct exposure and focal length and whatnot. If you have an old lens that does not have these CPU contacts, then you need to work a little bit more. When you have such an old lens, the first thing is that you cannot control the aperture from the camera body. You will have to turn that yourself, as I'm doing here. And some do actually not see that as a disadvantage, but it is a change that normally when you mount your lens, you would put that at the minimum aperture and then mount it, and then you can control it from the front command dial. But here you will have to change it on the lens. That's one change. The other thing is that once you have mounted the lens here, we'll give that a try. The camera does not know how fast your lens is. Here you can see by a little bit of luck, the camera actually knows this is a very fast lens and that the maximum aperture is 1.2, and that the minimum is something like, if I remember correctly, f16. But it has to be set up. You have to tell your camera what lens it is. Now let me just show you how that is done. In the setup menu, again, you need to go 1, 2, and 3 screens down. And then you have something called non-CPU lens data. And if you select that one, you can see here you can tell the camera for different lenses what is the focal length and what is the maximum aperture for that lens. And you can see here I've done that for the f1.2 lens here, and it has a focal length of 50. Of course, it doesn't really work for zoom lenses because it can only give one value, but at least you get a little bit better information here along with your picture if you have set this up correctly. You can see here in this case I have lens number 1 is an FD50, number 2 is a 135 millimeter, not as fast as an FD50, and number 3 is a portrait lens, an 85 millimeter 1.8. So I have different lenses set up here and I can actually select it, and you need to make sure that when you're here that you get the yellow bar up to the done part and then press OK. Then you can see then the lens is selected. At the risk of being called King Obvious, I just wanted to mention that the exposure compensation, if you're using that normally when you shoot in manual mode, that has no effect because the exposure compensation is relative to the automated exposure. So no matter what you have set this to, this has no effect in manual mode. And then I would also like to bring to your attention that in the custom settings menu, the menu controls F. If you go down to number 12 here, that's on the second screen, you can actually ask to have reverse indicators. So a little configuration thing that is handy if you're used to having it the other way around. So that's really all there is to it. I hope this was useful. As always, happy shooting. Take care. Bye bye.